A political eruption has just shaken the very core of the British establishment. Keir Starmer, already under immense scrutiny, has now crossed a line no Prime Minister has dared to approach, publicly lashing out at King Charles in a fiery, closed-door exchange that has just been leaked to the public. This shocking confrontation follows an extraordinary move by the monarch himself, one that appears to signal tacit approval for Nigel Farage and Reform UK. As the British Crown breaks centuries of political silence with what many are calling a historic endorsement, Starmer's grip on power is slipping fast, and the nation is teetering on the edge of a full-blown political revolution. The Prime Minister's office is in chaos. According to credible sources from inside Westminster, Keir Starmer was said to have completely lost it after receiving word that King Charles had privately met with Reform UK figures to discuss the future of Britain. While the palace has not issued an official statement, insiders say the tone of the meeting indicated serious doubts about Labour's ability to lead. This revelation alone would have been politically explosive, but it was Starmer's furious reaction behind closed doors that has pushed the scandal into unprecedented territory. Reportedly calling the monarch's actions reckless and inflammatory, Starmer accused King Charles of meddling in government affairs and undermining the will of the people. It's the kind of language that has sent shockwaves through both Parliament and the public, with many questioning whether the Prime Minister has just committed a catastrophic political blunder. The tension between the monarchy and the Labour government has been building quietly for months. Ever since Labour's landslide election victory, Starmer has walked a thin line between asserting authority and avoiding confrontation with the Crown. But with the Labour Party now collapsing under economic mismanagement, internal rebellions and plummeting poll numbers, the King's apparent nod toward Reform UK is being seen by many as a necessary intervention to restore public trust. The implications of this royal shift are enormous. In a constitutional monarchy, overt political endorsements are rare, and for the palace to even appear supportive of an opposition movement is practically unheard of. But desperate times call for extraordinary actions. The UK is gripped by runaway inflation, social unrest, mass protests, and a government that seems paralysed by indecision. In this climate, the King's symbolic move is being interpreted as a rallying cry for change, and Reform UK is riding the wave with unprecedented momentum. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage wasted no time seizing the moment. Speaking to reporters outside Reform UK headquarters, he declared the nation had reached a turning point in British history. According to Farage, the public is utterly betrayed by the old parties, and Reform is now the only force left that can deliver stability and hope. His words struck a chord with millions across the country, who are fed up with empty promises and political theatre. With Starmer now publicly at odds with the King and his own cabinet fracturing, Farage has emerged as the face of a political uprising that is gaining speed by the hour. Redfield and Wilton's latest polling shows a dramatic drop in Labour support, now down to just 28%, while Reform UK has surged to 31%, a level of popularity previously unimaginable for a party once considered a fringe movement. Inside Downing Street, fear has turned into desperation. Several high-ranking Labour MPs have anonymously expressed concern that Starmer's outburst may have permanently damaged relations with the Crown. One senior aide was quoted saying, "The Prime Minister may have just signed his own political death warrant." Meanwhile, public confidence in the Labour government continues to nosedive. After only 8 months in power, voters are already demanding another general election. The British public is feeling betrayed, misled, and more divided than ever, and all signs point toward an irreversible collapse of Labour's dominance. If the King's informal gesture toward Reform UK proves to be the tipping point, then Starmer's days in number 10 could be numbered. But it doesn't stop there. The ripple effects of this royal rupture are being felt far beyond Westminster. Constitutional scholars, royal commentators, and former civil servants have begun weighing in, calling this the most significant political crisis since the abdication of Edward VIII. The Prime Minister's decision to lash out so aggressively has broken the unspoken rule of British politics: you don't attack the Crown. Whether out of desperation or blind fury, Starmer has now done what no modern PM has dared, and the consequences could be devastating. As this story continues to develop, one thing is certain. Britain is entering a dangerous new chapter, one where old traditions are collapsing and new power centres are rising. Reform UK is no longer a protest party. With public support swelling and a symbolic nod from the monarchy, it is now a contender for real power. The Prime Minister's relationship with the monarchy has always been delicately managed, but what has now erupted between Keir Starmer and King Charles marks a catastrophic breakdown in protocol and perception. Behind the grandeur of Buckingham Palace and the fortified walls of Downing Street, the battle lines are being drawn, not just between political parties, but between the government and the Crown itself. Sources close to the royal household indicate that the King's meeting with figures from Reform UK was not only deliberate, but long overdue. Reportedly, the monarch had grown increasingly alarmed at the level of public dissatisfaction, especially in the wake of mass protests across rural areas, economic stagnation, and the alarming erosion of social unity. The monarch's advisors are said to have raised concerns over the sharp rise in food insecurity, housing shortages, and violent crime, all under Labour's governance. For the King, a figure of unity and stability, remaining silent was no longer an option. His symbolic gesture to meet with Reform UK has now become the epicentre of one of the most explosive political earthquakes in modern British history. Starmer, on the other hand, has responded with a mixture of fury and fear. According to leaks from his inner circle, he reportedly accused King Charles of violating the constitutional balance and undermining democracy itself by granting any form of perceived legitimacy to an opposition party. But many in Parliament and millions of ordinary Britons disagree. Across the nation, there's a growing belief that the monarch merely reflected the voice of the people. With Labour rapidly losing support due to broken promises, spiralling inflation, and a government riddled with indecision, the King's subtle intervention is being viewed by many not as political interference, but as a moral duty. The monarchy's role may be ceremonial, but its influence, especially in moments of crisis, is undeniable. Starmer's inability to understand that has now alienated not only his opponents, but also a substantial portion of his own voter base. Adding fuel to the fire, new documents surfaced revealing that a growing number of senior Labour officials had previously warned Starmer about the rising threat of Reform UK, but were ignored or dismissed. These warnings, buried deep within internal memos and policy reviews, painted a picture of a government dangerously out of touch with reality. Voters felt betrayed by Labour's failure to address core issues like immigration, housing, rural decay, and national security. When Reform UK began filling that void with bold promises and unapologetic rhetoric, millions of Britons saw them as a breath of fresh air rather than political opportunists. The Labour leadership's unwillingness to adapt has only deepened the crisis. And now, with Starmer attacking the King instead of accepting responsibility, the damage to Labour's image could be irreversible. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage has maintained a composed but forceful presence on the national stage. In a recent interview, he stated that Britain is crying out for leadership, not lectures, and took aim directly at Starmer's meltdown. Farage labelled the Prime Minister's attack on the monarch as an act of desperation from a man who's losing control of both his party and the country. His message resonated deeply, not just with Reform UK supporters, but with disillusioned Labour voters who once believed Starmer would bring competence and order. The narrative has shifted dramatically, from Labour's grand promises of renewal to Reform's grassroots revolution, now backed, albeit informally, by the highest symbolic figure in the nation. This alignment of public anger, political momentum, and royal recognition has created a perfect storm that could sweep Starmer and his party out of power far sooner than anyone anticipated. Economic data released this week has only accelerated the fall. Inflation has ticked up again, with food prices reaching a new all-time high. Energy bills remain unsustainable for millions of families, and unemployment is beginning to rise in key sectors. The spring statement delivered by Rachel Reeves was widely criticised as tone-deaf, offering little relief for struggling households while continuing to defend Labour's controversial spending policies. With Farage hammering home the message that Labour has failed to deliver on its mandate, and now even fallen into conflict with the monarchy, the public mood is quickly turning from frustration to fury. Protests have erupted in several cities, some directly outside government buildings. In a scene not seen in recent decades, protesters in Manchester were even seen waving placards bearing the words, "Farage is the future," alongside images of King Charles. Perhaps the most damning indictment of Labour's collapse comes from within its own ranks. A number of Labour backbenchers have reportedly begun informal talks with centrist and reform-aligned MPs, exploring options to distance themselves from Starmer's leadership. Whispers of a no-confidence motion are growing louder, and insiders have described an atmosphere of betrayal and panic. For the Prime Minister to not only lose control of public opinion, but also to wage war with the monarch, has created a constitutional and political crisis on a scale unseen since the 20th century. The royal household has refused to comment publicly, but Buckingham Palace officials are reportedly deeply disappointed by Starmer's choice of words, calling them inappropriate and disrespectful to the Crown's long-standing impartiality. As the drama unfolds, Britain finds itself staring into an uncertain future. The Crown, traditionally the quiet observer of the political process, now stands as an unintentional catalyst for change. Reform UK, bolstered by momentum and now viewed as the alternative blessed by the symbolic moral authority of the King, is preparing to launch what it calls its National Renewal Plan, a bold package of policies aimed at restoring public faith, rebuilding the economy, and reviving British identity. Whether or not these promises will materialise remains to be seen, but one thing is no longer in doubt. Keir Starmer's war against the monarchy has become a political disaster of historic proportions. The clash between Labour and the Crown has unleashed a wave of support for Reform UK that could soon translate into real power. And it all began with 3 words no one expected to hear from a sitting Prime Minister. The King interferes. The consequences of Keir Starmer's verbal assault on King Charles are intensifying by the hour. What began as a furious reaction to a private royal meeting has now spiralled into a full-blown crisis that threatens to dismantle the Labour government from within. Across Whitehall, officials are scrambling to contain the political wildfire ignited by Starmer's outburst. Sources report that emergency meetings have been held behind closed doors to assess the fallout, but it may already be too late. Starmer's attempt to portray the King's engagement with Reform UK as a breach of constitutional boundaries has not only failed, it has backfired spectacularly. Legal experts and constitutional historians have lined up to remind the public that the monarch's role, while symbolic, is permitted to interact with leaders across the political spectrum as part of their duty to stay informed. What Starmer has done, in contrast, is unleash a constitutional controversy by attacking the very institution that embodies Britain's unity and heritage. The political establishment is now split down the middle. On one side, hardline Labour loyalists are trying desperately to defend Starmer's conduct, insisting that the Prime Minister merely expressed concern about political neutrality. On the other side, a growing number of MPs, commentators, and even former Labour officials have broken ranks, calling his remarks inexcusable, arrogant, and dangerously divisive. The press has pounced on the scandal with unrelenting coverage. Headlines across Britain's leading newspapers are blistering in tone, branding Starmer's comments a reckless declaration of war against the monarchy. Even traditionally left-leaning publications have expressed deep concern, with one editorial stating, "You do not win back the people by insulting the Crown." Starmer has misread the nation's heartbeat entirely. The backlash is widespread, fierce, and still growing. Public opinion mirrors the media storm. Polls conducted just 24 hours after the leak of Starmer's confrontation reveal a devastating shift in sentiment. A staggering 61% of Britons now believe the Prime Minister has gone too far, with nearly half calling for a formal apology to the King. Meanwhile, support for Labour has dropped sharply, falling below 25% for the first time since their election victory. Reform UK, in contrast, has gained a dramatic boost, now neck and neck with Labour and even leading in several critical constituencies. The data suggests something far deeper than a temporary scandal. This is not just a momentary lapse in judgment. It's a profound rupture between Labour and the very institutions that many Britons still hold dear. Compounding the damage, Reform UK has turned this moment into a defining narrative of its campaign. Nigel Farage and his allies have framed Starmer's fury as proof of Labour's detachment from national values. In a rousing address outside Parliament, Farage proclaimed that a government that disrespects the Crown will never respect the people. The crowd erupted in applause as he outlined his party's vision of a restored Britain, one that upholds tradition, secures borders, supports working families, and governs with clarity and courage. Farage's speech was not just political rhetoric. It was a direct challenge to the legitimacy of Starmer's government. The message resonated not only with Reform's base, but also with swing voters, pensioners, veterans, and working-class citizens who feel abandoned by Labour's policies and rhetoric. The symbolism of the monarch siding, however discreetly, with Reform UK has become more than just a gesture. It has been transformed into a rallying cry. Reform's social media platforms have exploded with videos, statements, and digital posters featuring images of King Charles alongside slogans like "The nation deserves better" and "Time for real change." Although the royal household has not confirmed any endorsement, the perception alone has triggered a massive surge in public engagement. Membership in Reform UK has reportedly doubled in just 3 days, and local party branches are overwhelmed with new volunteers. While Labour scrambles to hold emergency press conferences and issue carefully worded statements, Reform is on the offensive, projecting confidence, order, and momentum. Meanwhile, cracks within Labour's power structure are widening. The shadow cabinet is reportedly split over how to respond. Some are urging Starmer to issue a formal statement of respect toward the Crown to ease tensions, while others believe any concession would signal weakness and embolden Farage further. The indecision and internal division only reinforce what many Britons already feel, that Labour is not in control. Rachel Reeves has remained mostly silent since the Prime Minister's comments, adding to speculation that even the Chancellor is distancing herself from Starmer's increasingly toxic political fallout. One MP close to the Chancellor was quoted anonymously as saying, "This is not what we campaigned for. We promised stability and unity. Now we're making enemies of our own institutions." Amid the turmoil, the King has returned to Sandringham, remaining silent on the matter but surrounded by aides and advisors. While Buckingham Palace has declined to comment, the timing of the King's retreat suggests a desire to avoid further escalation. However, the damage has already been done. The image of the monarch as a neutral observer has been shattered, not by his actions, but by Starmer's rage. Even if the palace maintains its official silence, the perception of royal disapproval toward Labour and alignment with reform is likely to remain etched in the public consciousness. Analysts are now predicting that if Labour's internal collapse continues, a snap election could be forced within the next few months. Should that happen, Reform UK would be in its strongest position yet, potentially securing historic gains or even forming a coalition government with other populist-leaning independents. As the crisis deepens, the mood across the country is one of disbelief, anger, and anticipation. The British people are watching closely, many wondering how their elected leader could have misjudged the tone of the nation so badly. What was intended as a defence of political autonomy has instead been interpreted as an attack on tradition, history, and national identity. Starmer has not only weakened his own leadership, he may have ignited a cultural backlash that pushes the electorate firmly into the arms of Reform UK. For many, this is no longer about party politics. It is about who respects Britain's foundations and who is willing to burn bridges to stay in power. This is a turning point in British politics that history will not forget, as the Labour Party crumbles under the weight of its own arrogance and disconnect, and as Keir Starmer's reckless war of words with King Charles ignites outrage across the nation. One question now echoes louder than ever. Who truly speaks for the people? Reform UK is rising not by accident, but by answering a call that Labour has long ignored. The battle for Britain's future is no longer just in Parliament. It's in our homes, our communities, and in every vote that will shape the path ahead. If you believe in standing up for truth, tradition, and the voice of everyday Britons, then don't stay silent. Share this video with your friends, your family, and your community. Let the world know what the mainstream media won't show. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear from you. And most importantly, subscribe to Britain Nexus now. And join us as we continue to expose the truth behind the headlines. This isn't just politics anymore. This is a national reckoning. Don't miss what comes next.